This is our third Thursday night of our Holocaust Remembrance this month. Added some community-wide events, and tonight is a very, very special night. And remind you that Sunday is our big annual event, our 6th annual International Holocaust Remembrance Day at the Depot, downtown at 3 o'clock. Tim Lorsch from Nashville is our guest speaker, and we'll be sharing a multimedia presentation about his family's survival. You don't want to miss it. It'll be great. We'll have a reception to follow. So we hope you can be there 3 o'clock this Sunday. With the last couple of Thursday nights, we've had film and discussion, panel discussion about a couple of survivor stories. Before we get started tonight, you'll take that little thing that we're all attached to, that cell phone, and turn it off or turn it down. Make sure your vibrate doesn't sing. You'll take care of that right now. But we're looking forward to tonight and to Sunday. It's been a full month of Holocaust remembrance. Some of us doing some extra things besides just our events. And appreciate so much those of you that I've seen every week. We appreciate the new faces tonight. It'll be a remarkable evening, and you'll be glad you came out. Before we get started tonight, I want to introduce one of our board members. Kathy Heisley is going to come and do a presentation for us. Looks like I'm going to sing or something, doesn't it? You don't want that.
Well, I'm Kathy Heisley. I'm the Vice President of Ruth Remnant Ministries, and thank you all so much for coming out on this cold and rainy evening. Tonight I have the privilege of acknowledging Northside Methodist Academy and their continued support for what we do at Ruth Remnant Ministries, and so their continuing efforts also to educate children about the Holocaust. So tonight, accepting our acknowledgement for them is Robbie Ann Gilbert. She's their high school principal. You want to come up, Robbie Ann? When I asked Robbie Ann to come tonight, I asked her if she would just give me a statement about why Holocaust education was so important to her personally and why it was important to Northside Methodist Academy. And I'd like to read to you what she sent me on modern technology, of course. I had a lot I was going to say about Robbie Ann, personally and professionally, because we talked together here before she became the principal. But after I read this, I went, nothing I could say. I mean, you'll all get her character once you hear this. So this is from Robbie Ann. I think the importance of teaching the history of the Holocaust is to obviously teach the historical facts of the past to the up-and-coming generations so that atrocities like the Holocaust are never repeated. But more importantly, Holocaust education is instrumental in teaching students to know why they believe, what they believe, to teach them how to defend their faith, and to teach them empathy. The biggest impact on my Holocaust knowledge was when I went through the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. with NMA. It brought to life the history that I had been told about but too young to experience or to remember. The gut-wrenching walk through the train car where people were herded like cattle took my breath away, and the shoes stacked up where so many people were led into the gas chambers. The mute shoes I saw that were once filled brought it all to life and brought a righteous indignation that we as educators should want to pass on to our students. To stand up for something we feel is against God's law and not to sit by passively. So I think that they're very deserving of an acknowledgement. So tonight we're going to give them a book written by our good friend Chris Edmonds, who actually came and spoke to your students here about this true story of his father during World War II. He was a hero, and it's a signed copy of the book for your library. So I don't think I've ever called Robbie Ann that she's refused me anything. this humongous room that we have tonight. We've used it 3 weeks in a row at no charge to do this. She allows members of our organization to come and speak to classes, Bible classes, history classes. She knows the importance of history, as does most of Northside's faculty. And it's hard to equip students if they don't know history. Well, I'll read this from the book. It'll sum it up. So here's the acknowledgement, Robbie, and to Northside. We, Lutheran Ministry, gratefully acknowledge Northside Methodist Academy's continuing support of Holocaust awareness and its commitment to educate our youth on the atrocities perpetrated on the Jewish people and other minorities during World War II. This book is written about the courage of a young Christian American soldier who, under imminent threat of death, stood his ground and defied a German officer's command to identify Jewish soldiers under his command in a prisoner of war camp. This story is a shining example of the impact one person with the courage to stand up against evil can have, and it's a lesson to our youth that, in the words of Edmund Burke, the only thing necessary for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Those who don't know their history are doomed to repeat it. And I think Northside Methodist Academy understands that, as does Robbie Ann. So thank y'all.
Thank you. The very mention of the words music and Holocaust together seem quite the paradox. For the Shoah brings us memory of death at the hands of evil humankind, whereas music, more often than not, raises our souls, living souls, above even the most mundane of faults or circumstances. Music breathes life, and the music from the period of the Holocaust reminds us that there is a choice in the face of great evil and impending death as to how we will live the moments we are given. Listen to the following about just a few musicians from the Shoah. From January to November 1944, Fania Fenelon, Fanny Goldstein, played, sang, and transcribed music for an all-female orchestra in Birkenau, the extermination camp in the Auschwitz prison complex. In her book, Playing for Time, she says the universe seemed both an oasis and a ghetto. Later I was to learn it was also a sort of sandwich of music between two slices of wretchedness. The Italian composer Francesco Lautaro, in his Mission to Resurrect Music, composed by prisoners in the camps, writes, "The music played and composed during the Holocaust by Jewish musicians demonstrates that the creative mind cannot be imprisoned, even in conditions of brutality." Alex Hertzsomer was a Prague-born Jewish pianist and music teacher, survivor of the Theresienstadt concentration camp, and who lived to be 110 years of age. She played piano 3 hours a day until the end of her life, claiming, "Music saved my life, and music saves me still." Of her time in prison during the Holocaust, she wrote, "Music is mankind's greatest miracle. From the very first note, one is transported into a higher, other world, and that is how it was when we played or listened in the ghetto." In the scriptures, Psalm 137 speaks of an earlier time when the captors of the Jewish people taunted them to play during times of despair and wanted them to feign merriment amongst their captivity. "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. Upon the willows in the midst of it we hung our harps. For there our captors demanded of us songs and our tormentors mirth, saying, 'Sing us one of the songs of Zion.' How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land?" Victor Ullmann from Vienna was an accomplished symphony conductor and composer. He was deported from Prague in 1942 to the Theresienstadt camp, where his captors for a time allowed Victor to continue in his music composition under their auspices. Revealing his spiritual strength, Victor states in one of the last things he wrote, "It must be emphasized that at this camp it has served to enhance, not to impede, my musical activities. That by no means did we sit weeping on the banks of the waters of Babylon, and that our endeavor with respect to arts was commensurate with our will to live. And I am convinced that all those who life and in art were fighting to force form upon resisting matter will agree with me. Victor was deported to Auschwitz on October 16, 1944, in one of the last transports where he died in the gas chambers. Playing as a free people, sometimes melody comes easy, but being forced to play by your enemies or daring to play under the iron hand of your captors, Viktor Frankl probably answers this best with one of his famous quotes. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing. The last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. For the Jewish musicians of the Holocaust, choosing to compose, play music, and sing many times meant freedom, not physically, but freedom for the soul indeed. Tonight I welcome you to Music of the Holocaust, 1939 to 1946. Songs of suffering, songs of defiance. And I want to introduce to you our team tonight. Renee Jones, our pianist, is a Dothan native and has played piano since she was a young girl. After studying music with Ron Toller at Wallace Community College, she transferred to the University of Montevallo, where she studied with Dr. Anthony Patton, earning a bachelor's degree in piano performance and piano pedagogy. Wow. In the past, she has served as a church musician, pianist, worship leader, minister of music in local congregations and community Bible study. She is the co-owner of Renaissance School of Music in Dothan, where she teaches private lessons in piano and voice. As an active member of our local Wiregrass Music Teachers Association, Renee enjoys teaching, composing, this night's right up your alley, isn't it? Teaching, composing, playing, and singing for weddings, receptions, and church and community events. She lives here in Dothan with her husband and 2 boys. Our wonderful cantor for the evening, Cantor Neil Schwartz, is the spiritual leader for Temple Emanuel in Dothan, Alabama. He has served congregations in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee, and he has been the sole spiritual leader in Saskatchewan and Louisiana. He graduated the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1980. He has a master's in religion and culture and an honorary doctorate. Cantor Neil taught online for Hebrew College in Boston. He has helped Cantor software with programs teaching biblical and liturgical chant, and he is involved in many interfaith activities. And I myself am very happy that Neil is in Dothan. We're happy to have him, and we have forged a friendship and appreciate so much him being a part of our remembrance this year. Holocaust study and remembrance means a great deal to him, as he will express to you. So I ask you to be ready to receive a blessing as we hear Music of the Holocaust, 1939 to 1946.
Thank you. And first, some general thank yous, because I suspect that by the end of this program, I'm not going to be in any shape to remember to say thank yous. So, to Denise and the rest of the leadership of Roof Remnant, thank you for organizing this and for giving us this opportunity. To Renee, thank you for amazing musicianship and dedication. To the school, our principal, to Gabe, thank you for your hospitality. I'm going to invite you to take a look at the inside cover of your program. You will see that on the facing page, there's a slightly different order. The order on the right-hand side of the inside of the cover is the correct order. I've done this program both ways, but this felt like a better alteration between moods. And both, the two that are switched are Anima Amin and Stildenach. They're both from 1942. So this entire program is set up chronologically. I'd like to just point out a couple highlights from the inside of the front cover, and then as we get to each song, I will try to supplement a little bit the description that is on the facing page. So the first thing to say is that there are at least 11 million direct civilian casualty victims of the Holocaust. Only 6 million of those are Jews. The other 5 million are anybody else who was different. The Roma, proper term for gypsies, the handicapped, the list goes on and on and on. And that's a lesson we have to remember. These songs, you can see from the subtitle of the program, are not just songs of suffering, but they're also songs of defiance, some of them. And that reflects the fact that in the state of Israel, the commemoration which is tied into the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which is commemorated in one of these songs, 1943. The timing of Yom HaShoah in Israel is timed to match when the young people, the few survivors of the Warsaw Ghetto, were able to stand off the Germans for an entire month. That began at Passover. But in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel, the proper term for Yom HaShoah is Yom HaShoah Ugevurah, the day of remembrance of the Shoah, the destruction, and the resistance. So one thing that I always insist in doing anytime I sing music of the Holocaust is singing a couple of the resistance songs, and you will hear those tonight. I was trained as an educator, never read what people have in front of them. So let me just point out a couple of highlights. The 1935 Nuremberg laws. All I will say is that some of the ways that Jews were disenfranchised from citizenship in Germany, a little scary. Kristallnacht, the first actual destruction. Is this, oh, did this turn off? There we go. I didn't realize I'd have to do that repeatedly. I thought once it was on, it would stand. Sorry. Okay, well, okay. I hope you heard enough that I don't have to repeat everything I just said. Kristallnacht was the first actual destruction. And it's amazing that any synagogues survived in Germany from Kristallnacht. The first step was the walled ghettos, but the second step of the killing is not as well known. You see the word Einsatzgruppen next to July 1941? That is going to inform several of these songs, because one of the places where the Einsatzgruppen did their horrible work before the final solution, which wasn't until 1942, was right outside the ghettos, in fields outside the cities. So we're going to hear songs referring to Ponar. Several of these songs were composed in the Vilna ghetto, and the killing field of Ponar was right outside Vilna. And of course, it all became mechanized in 1942. I actually list at the bottom of that page the 6 death camps. There were dozens and dozens of concentration camps, but in most of them, people were simply worked to death. These are the 6 that actually had the factory-like mechanism of killing people en masse. There were revolts. I've only listed 3. Treblinka, Sobibor, and it wasn't so much a revolt as extraordinary courage that the Danish used their small boats, and when it became clear that the Danish Jews were going to be targeted, they got them all over into neutral Sweden. in their fishing boats and their rowboats. Amazing story. And of course, the famous line that then General Eisenhower said as he participated in the liberation of whichever camp he was helping liberate. We must take photographs because someday people will deny this. We're witnessing that. So our first song is Brent. The setting of Brent is actually 38. I think the song was probably composed in 1939. The two Yiddish words. Didn't do this during the rehearsals. No, it's not going green again.
Just continue.
Okay. The song talks about shtetl. A shtetl is a very small village in Eastern Europe and in Western Russia. The other thing that I mentioned in the notes for the program are the fact that what Mordecai Gebirtig was reacting to was a pogrom. A pogrom is a state-sponsored attack specifically on a Jewish community which always lived in their own corner of a village, a shtetl. So this is Mordecai Gebirtig saying something's happening well before it happened. Esperant, Bridela, Esperant. Oi, unser Ohrenstädtel nebet brennt. Weise Winden mit ihr Gosen, reißen, brechen und sie bläusen. Stärker noch die wilde Flammen, als herumscheun brennt. Und ihr steht und guckt säusig mit verleckter Hand. Und ihr steht und guckt säusig, unser Städtel brennt. It burns, brothers, it burns. Our poor Städtel pitifully burns. Angry wind with rage and curses tears and shatters and disperses. Wild flames leap, they twist and turn. Everything now burns. And you stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned. And you stand there looking on, while our shtetl burns. It burns, brothers, it burns. Our poor shtetl pitifully burns. Tongues of flame with force and power have our villages devoured, and the wild wind howls and churns. Our shtetl burns. and you stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned. And you stand there looking on, while our shtetl burns. It burns, brothers, it burns. Help can only come if you return the love which shtetl once inspired. Take up arms, put out the fire. Douse it with your blood, be true, show what you can do. Don't just stand there looking on, hands folded, palms upturned. Don't just stand, put out the fire, for our shtetl burns. And by the way, I would like to give you permission to not clap. This doesn't feel like a clapping sort of situation. Okay. So I mentioned Einsatzgruppen. That's better. I mentioned Einsatzgruppen. They were operated all over Eastern Europe and Western Russia. The best way to translate that is mobile killing squads. The way they did it is they forced the Jews to dig a huge trench. Then they stripped them, lined them up, and shot them on the edge of the trench to fall in. Everybody. Kids were not exempted. So, Ponar, as I said, was outside of Vilna, and several of our songs come from Vilna. This one was written by, the poem was written by an 11-year-old, and he actually did survive.
Stille, Lome schweigen, Toren wachsen dom. So oben See verpflanzt die Sonnen, grünen See zum Blom. Ihren Wegen so Ponar zu, es wird kein Weg zurück. Ist der Tate wo verschwunden und mit ihm das Glück. Stille Kind, meinst wenn nicht heute, sie helft nicht kein Gewinn. Unser Unglück will in Sohnem, sei wie nicht verstehen. So oben bräges euch die Almen, so oben fieses euch zusammen. Nur zu unser Pein kein bissel Schein, kein bissel Schein. Quiet, quiet, let's be silent. Dead are growing here. They were planted by the tyrant. See their bloom appear. All the roads lead to Ponar now. There are no roads back. And your father also vanished, and with him our love. Still, my child, don't cry, my jewel, tears no help command. Our pain, callous people never understand. Seas and oceans have their order. Prison also has its border. But to our plight there is no light, there is no light. Spring has come, the earth receives her, but to us brings fall. And the day is filled with flowers, to us darkness calls. Autumn leaves with gold are softened, in us grow deep scars. And a mother somewhere orphaned her child in Ponar. Now the river to his prisoner is enmeshed in pain, while the blocks of ice tear through her to the ocean strain. Still things frozen melt, remember, and cold winds to warmth surrender. Future brings a smile, so calls your child, so calls your child. By the way, I should have said that Yiddish is 1,000-year-old German. So when scholars want to study what German was something like, they talked either in Amishman and Lancaster, or they talked to a Jew who knows Yiddish well. So this Yiddish text was written by a poetess. On one of the worst days of the Ponar killing, this kid's parents were killed. 3-year-old. But he somehow was saved. And she actually adopted him until she herself was killed a couple years later. Stremlen Vögel auf die Zweigen schlaf mein teure Kind. Bei dein Wiege auf dein Narre sitzt der Fremde und singt. Bei dein Wiegele auf dein Narre sitzt a Fremde und singt. Ju, 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 ju. Birds sit drowsing on the branches. Sleep, my precious child. By your cradle, in your littleness, sings a stranger by your side. By your cradle, in your littleness, sings a stranger by your side. You, 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 you. Here your cradle had its dwelling, laced with happiness in store. But your mother, oh, your mother will return no your mother, oh, your mother will return no more. I have seen your father running under heads of stone, flying over fields there echoed his desolated moan, flying over fields there echoed his desolated moan. But one of the other forms of cultural resistance in those ghettos was to have schools for the kids, to have choirs, to even have youth groups. A couple of these songs, the music was written by Schwartz, and he apparently did survive the war, fortunately. Went on to become a composer in the new state of Israel. But this was a rousing youth hymn to try to get the kids to, in the horror that they were experiencing of the sickness and the starvation in the ghettos, to have some sense of solidarity, hope. Unser Lied ist voll mit Treuer, dreist ist unser Muntergang. Quatscht die Seine, wagt beim Teuer, Sturm Jugend mit Gesang. Jung ist jeder will es wilder, Jörg haben kein Badei. Alte kennen, euch seid Kinder von der neuen, freien Zeit. Our song is filled with grieving, bold our step, we march along. Though the foe the gateways watching, youth come storming with their song. Young are they whose age won't bind them. Years don't really mean a thing. Elders also can be children in the newer, freer spring. Those who roam upon the highways, those who step with hope is strong. From the ghetto, youth salutes them, and their greetings send along. Young are they whose age won't bind them. Years don't really mean a thing. Elders also can be children in the newer, freer spring. So we're girding our muscles in our ranks. We're planting steel where a blacksmith, the builder, marches. We will join them with our zeal. Young are they, whose age won't bind them. Years don't really mean a thing. Elders also can be children in the new free spring.
Clap on that one.
Oh. So we're going to an Emanuel. This is probably the closest thing to a prayer in this entire program. It actually, Maimonides lived in the 1100s. It actually is one of his 13 articles of faith. But there are eyewitnesses who say that the metric melody that I'm going to sing was actually sung by Jews on their way into the gas chambers in the camps. But before getting there, I'm going to share with you something that didn't used to be part of this program. Elie Wiesel brought out another version of it from his experience at Auschwitz. And I studied with him. The literal translation is, I believe in the coming of the Messiah, and even though he may tarry, I still believe. Beviat HaMashiach. Ani Mamin B'emuna Shlema Beviat HaMashiach. Ani Mamin B'emuna Shlema Beviat HaMashiach. Ve'af al pi she'yitmamea im kol zeh achakelu. Ve'af al pi she'yitmamea in kol ze achakelu. Bechol yom sheyavo. Amin, amin, amin. Ani Mamin Emuna Shlema Beviat HaMashiach. Beviat HaMashiach. אני מאמין, ואף על פי שיתממע, עם כל זה אני מאמין. It's too much to go straight from that into Zognet Kemo. So what we have next is the ballad Still die Nacht. One of my rehearsals here, our rehearsals here, there were some students, and I told them that this ballad was about a teenage girl who, under the direction of one of the veteran male older partisans, launched the first successful attack coming out of the Vilna ghetto. They blew up an ammunition column. So Hirsch Glig, who we're going to hear from again as having written Zognet Kemo, he wrote this ballad about her. Still die Nacht unausgestemmt und die Frost hat stark gebrannt. Sie gedenkst du, wie ich hab dich gelernt. Halt in a Speyer in die Hand. Sie gedenkst du, wie ich hab dich gelernt. Halt in a Speyer in die Hand. Still the night and full of starlight, and the frost burned on the land. Do you still remember how I taught you to hold a revolver in your hand? Do you still remember how I taught you to hold a revolver in your hand? A girl, a sheepskin, and a beret. In her hands she holds a gun. A girl with her face as smooth as velvet keeps watch on the enemy's caravan. A girl with her face as smooth as velvet keeps watch on the enemy's caravan. And aim a shot right on the target. Her small pistol reached its mark. A truck filled high with ammunition. Her shot had stopped it in the dark. A truck filled high with ammunition. Her shot had stopped it in the dark. dawn, she crept out of the woodland with snowy garlands in her hair. Encouraged by her little victory for our future freer heirs. Encouraged by her little victory for our future freer heirs. She did not survive the war, but there were many teenage female partisans. A couple of them survived the war and were able to start their lives over once Israel became a state. Okay, Hirschglick. Remember I was talking about the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? Well, that electrified whatever survived of European Jewry. And again, they were just teenagers, most of them. Anybody see the movie The Pianist? That was set in the Warsaw Ghetto. And remember how it ends? The only way the Germans were able to quell the rebellion after an entire month was literally to burn it down to the ground and to burn out the sewers where the kids were hiding. Holding off tanks with Molotov cocktails and such. Well, Hirschglick, who himself also did not survive the war, he wrote this song in response to this. And I think he actually lived long enough to see this totally sweep the European continent. It became the official partisan song of all the Jewish partisans, from Holland to Russia. Sag nicht einmal, was du gehst den letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleien auf a stellen bleie Tag. Kommen wird noch unser eisgebänkte Show, es wird abheugt und unser Trott, wir seien da. Kommen wird noch unser eisgebänkte Show, es wird abheugt und unser Trott, wir seien da. Never say this is the final road for you. The leaden skies may cover over days of blue. As the hour that we long for is so near, our step beats out the message, we are here. As the hour that we long for is so near, our step beats out the message, we are here. From lands so green with palms to lands all white with snow, we shall be coming with our anguish and our woe. And where a spurt of our blood fell on the earth, there our courage and our spirit have rebirth. Where a spurt of our blood fell on the earth, there our courage and our spirit have rebirth. This song was written with our blood and not with lead. It's not a little tune that birds sing overhead. This song the people sang amidst collapsing walls. With grenades in hand they heeded to the call. This song the people sang amidst collapsing walls. With grenades in hand, they heeded to the call. Terezin was a fortress in Czechoslovakia. It was set up as a Potemkin village, a model concentration camp, quote unquote, specifically for the purpose of fooling the Red Cross. Out of Terezin, even though the vast majority of the kids who were held there and their teachers, out of Terezin was saved an enormous outpouring of poems, music, even an opera was composed in there, paintings. One of the most famous is I Never Saw Another Butterfly. It's been set several times. This particular setting was actually done about 30, 35 years ago by somebody my age back then. And I promise I'm going to get through this in one piece, but we'll try. The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone, such a yellow is carried lightly way up high. It went away, I'm sure, because it wished to kiss the sun goodbye. The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone. For 7 weeks I've lived in here, pent up inside this ghetto. But I have found my people here. The dandelions call to me, and the white chestnut candles in the court. Only I never saw another butterfly. The very last, so richly, brightly, dazzling yellow. Perhaps if the sun's tears could sing against a white stone, that butterfly was the last one. Butterflies don't live in here. So on the list of the summaries of the songs, I've given you some of Hannah Senish's biography. Growing up as a teenager in Hungary, Aliyah, wrote a lot of Hebrew poetry while she was there. The Kibbutzniks, the British, to send them to try to rescue that last gasp of Hitler to kill the last surviving Jewish community, the one in Hungary, just before the war ended. They were all captured, all tortured. Her torture was even worse. Her mother obviously had never left Hungary. Her mother was tortured right in front of her. But the reason that I say 1946 is that in 1946, after it was all over, the Israeli composer David Zahavi set several of her poems to music, including this one. And while there were a couple of things that I sang that we did together here that were better known, like Ani Ma'amin and Zogna Kemo, among kids, Jewish teenagers, the one that I'm going to sing now is probably the best known.
Thank you. Wow. So much music, so much literature, so much art came out of the Holocaust. It's amazing. It's amazing, and a miracle in itself that we have so much of it today. And we thank you so very much for sharing that. Thank you so very much for sharing that. Adds new light to some of the names I recognized on here and stories about their life and things that they shared. Renee, thank you. Thank you. They've rehearsed and practiced, and they were a team, as you can tell. Thank you so very much for coming tonight, and I hope it was a blessing. It was a blessing to me. And hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Please make plans to come and bring folks with you. And you will not, this just builds. Every week it's just gotten better and better and better. And so we look forward to our time together on Sunday, culminating our month of remembrance, the international remembrance, that the nations are called to remember the Holocaust. And so we're doing our part to do that in our community. Again, thank you for being here, and safe travels home.